Hello, and welcome to the Argyle Finance Solutions Summit Tools, Tech, Trends. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. I have some important information to share with you, and then we will turn the floor over to our esteemed opening keynote speaker. First, we would like to take a moment to thank today's sponsors, Insight Software, Wolters Kluwer, and SAP. Our sponsors are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. Throughout today's event, you will also have the opportunity to be entered into a raffle. The more actions you take, the more points you will earn towards the raffle, and the top 10 point earners will be entered into a random drawing to win one of 3 fabulous prizes. So be sure to check out the prizes and raffle rules tab on the left-hand navigation bar to see how you can earn points. We also welcome you to stay socially connected during today's event. For those of you who are active on social media, please use the hashtag ArgyleDigital and follow us on X, formerly Twitter, at Argyle Exec Forum. Also, be sure to subscribe to Argyle on YouTube for exclusive access to all our past events. I would like to take a moment to touch on our content neutrality policy, which we have curated based on the feedback we have received over the years from our members. We have worked closely with our speaking faculty to ensure that you receive a set of balanced and neutral viewpoints during the session today, and we appreciate our members' support of this policy. Finally, and most importantly, we want to hear from you. So during each session, we encourage you to submit your questions and comments in the Q&A box on your screen. Following each presentation, we have set aside time for our speakers to weigh in on your questions. Thank you again for joining us today. Now let's get started. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Rena Kacker, FP&A Executive, SaaS, FinTech, and Life Sciences. We're super excited to have Rena for her opening keynote presentation titled FP&A, The Art of Building an Organization for Unpredictable Outcomes. Welcome, Rena. Over to you.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rena Kacker. I am a finance leader for a variety of industries. I've been in biotech, in software and service, payments, and others. Very happy to be here. I will share the session's objectives and make a case for changing the way we do FP&A. I will propose some solutions and propose a way to proceed to implement them. This session is appropriate for those early in their career, as well as those in more advanced stages where they are dealing with really tricky, challenging situations in managing their finance organization and taking their company forward. So to start, let's just do a quick overview of what is FP&A. Everyone's heard financial planning, analysis, budgeting, reporting. But there are many other aspects that are crucial to a successful FP&A function. A lot of scenario modeling. You are modeling for different scenarios that your company may go into in the next year, in the next 5 years, or even on a longer time frame. So there are what-if scenario analysis, mergers, acquisitions, macroeconomic updates, changes, geopolitical changes. People have to model for those. KPIs. FP&A is the steward of a lot of the critical KPIs, key performance indicators inside a company, whether it's your bookings, backlog, revenue, sales, customer satisfaction even, and profitability related, customer acquisition cost, lifetime value. A lot of these KPIs are held with the FP&A team and tracked. Financial modeling, that's the core tenet of FP&A. We are the ones that manage the models of the company. And when I say models, a model is a projection of many measures, KPIs, based on a few assumptions. Your assumptions include things that you control and what you know is real, such as your actuals, and you use those elements to project where you're going for the next 5 to 10 years. So those are models. Reporting and dashboarding, variance analysis, variance between what? Variance between budget and actuals, forecast and budget, variance between different scenarios, all kinds of variance analysis, and drivers for the variance. So there's no point in knowing the variance if we don't know why it happened. So that's the drivers. Was it something that was in control of the company? Was it out of control? Did we have contingency planning to prevent something? So we'll get into a bunch of these. So why does rigid FP&A fail in today's world? Over the last decade or so, those of us who've been in FP&A have been creating these elaborate budgets that start out in August with only 2 quarters of actuals, and the budget wraps up around Thanksgiving or Christmas. And by that time, so much more has happened within the company. It's constantly iterating. And while the budget's happening, um, a lot of spend is on pause, a lot of decisions are on pause because, hey, the budget is not final. So those are the shortfalls of today's budgeting cycle. And also the departments are sometimes siloed. They are not talking to each other. And that's another reason why the company can't put out optimal performance. There are long approval chains. Sometimes the highest spending items have to be approved all the way by the board of directors. And these approval cycles can last weeks or maybe months. And that leads to inefficiency within the company because you are ready to get a vendor started or a certain new hire started, and you're still waiting on approvals. So here's a fun fact: 4.5 months it takes a company to build a budget. And most people agree that that is way too slow. So what do you do differently? The 4 pillars of agile FP&A are rolling forecasts, which is you're always looking one more month in the future. So you might be doing monthly rolling forecasts that a lot of big tech companies do, where every month you look at the whole business for the next 12 months. So each month you add another month to the tail. So you're always having a 12-month outlook or an 18-month outlook. You collaborate cross-functionally so that everyone is responsible for certain measures of success, even though they may not be really determined by you or your team. For example, customer satisfaction, NPS, it may not be something that research can impact, but everyone aligns on what is success so that they all do their parts to get there. Real-time analytics, that's another big one. We are seeing more and more real-time data everywhere that we work. And scenario planning, like I mentioned, scenarios can be good and bad. They can be predictable or unpredictable. And we need to always know how we will react if something were to happen. So here's a fun fact. Netflix pivoted from DVD to streaming using rolling forecasts. And those of us who are old enough remember what happened with Blockbuster. So the silos, like I mentioned, when departments are working in self-preservation mode, they are trying to make sure they get their resources, they don't share resources, then things are not efficient and there are no connections. Whereas when we move to a connected ecosystem where everyone has joint scrums and stand-ups and all hands and planning sessions where everyone's engaged, and a plan is only complete when we understand what each of those teams will be expected to deliver from that plan. Not just putting a product or an app or a certain release out there, but is sales ready to sell that release? What is the sales quota going to look like? What is the pricing going to look like? Are the customer success agents ready to take those phone calls related to those technicalities that are going out in the release? Is it an end-to-end complete launch? And that is why they have to have joint measures of success, and they all have to be tied. Their compensation and other measures are all tied at the hip to joint KPIs. That's the sign of a agile organization where there is connectivity and shared gains. So, what are some of the best practices for the cultural transformation? Like I mentioned, cross functional planning, joint accountability, and mindset shift. We are not guarding the budget, we are enabling the business. And that means you have to be nimble. So, we'll get into that in a second. Um, Microsoft moved away from stack ranking their employees. Instead, they do now collaborative goals. Did we achieve the collaborative goals? That is the measure of success, not how one is ranked versus the other. And that led to some impressive revenue gains. So, leveraging data and analytics, like I mentioned, real time insights are so inevitably important right now. As we know, all our organizations are sitting on the cloud, all the systems are connected, and we can access everything updates in real time. So, how does this happen? Because data automatically integrates between the systems. So, for example, you see the little wheel on the right. You have your central cloud and you have your CRM. That could be Salesforce or Sugar CRM. You have your ERP, NetSuite, SAP, Oracle. You have a planning system like IBM, Host Analytics, Adaptive Insights, Adaptive Planning now. You have your HR systems such as a Bamboo. You have customer service like Zendesk. You have marketing automation such as HubSpot. And these systems are real time. You get an order through the CRM, it books an accounts receivable in the ERP. And when the cash comes in, cash goes up, accounts receivable goes down. The planning system captures all of this. If you onboard an employee, the HR system gets it, as does your ERP. If a customer requests a refund, your customer service system reflects that, as does your ERP, because the cash is impacted. So all these systems are seamlessly connected, kind of like our brains and hearts and lungs are all connected. So automated data integration is no longer something nuanced. It's pretty much the mainstream way that we execute. Um, Self-service analytics. More and more people and departments self-serve, and especially in FP&A, we give departments the ability to go plan in the planning system. They don't have to submit tedious budget templates anymore. They submit to us. They go into the planning system, they have their authentication, and they can enter their budgets and forecasts right there. Then we have machine learning models for predictive forecasting that basically learn from what happened in the past to predict what happens in the future. And that is why part of this is what you can't plan what you don't know. Like when the pandemic happened, nobody could see the upswing in remote virtual processes, Zoom, Netflix, and all of that. And then when the pandemic was gone, um, we couldn't foresee that everyone would want to go back to three-dimensional world. So for all of those, you need scenario analysis. And the companies normally manage these over dashboards, but a lot of these systems allow you to have mobile dashboards. I haven't seen personally those taking off in a big way, because a lot of these dashboards are, even though they are automated, they still have a lot of customized measuring techniques, so that what you call a certain booking or a certain revenue is not simply what the system says. It's got some adjustments in it. So those are all the ways that the new FP&A and real-time insights work. Moving along. So scenarios, like I mentioned, scenario analysis, we have to plan for multiple futures, literally. They may not happen. Most likely you will have what you call the base case, but you could have an optimistic case where you made a really good lateral acquisition that created synergies, and your revenue benefited from the acquired entity. The two of you merge, and now your revenue went up like a hockey stick. So that's an optimistic case. You could do that via an acquisition or a super successful marketing campaign, or you may have a really good product launch at a big conference, and everything would be like up and to the right. You may have a conservative case. What if there was an economic downturn or a certain product was outpaced by the competitors, and you didn't make it, especially in drug development. If the competitor's drug hits the market, that takes a huge toll on the products that are still in the clinic and advancing through the clinic. So, and there's lots of considerations. So a lot of these things, you have to have your conservative case. And all these cases are basically literally individual end-to-end models. Each of these cases is, if this happened, how many people would I hire? How much research dollars will I attribute? How many trials or in the clinical space would I conduct? What would be the size of the trials? Would I go after this population? Would I exclude? There are lots and lots of inputs that dictate what it's a complete scenario, as if that was the plan for the next 5 years. These scenarios are full-blown models. Black swan events like the pandemic, extreme disruptions. What if there's an earthquake? Hope not. Those are the black swan events. In the 2008 financial crisis, for those of you who were there, companies which built recession applicable models did much better than those that didn't know what to do. So yeah, there was a big shift in our market and in the overall business ecosystem. So what are some of the KPIs? So in addition to the KPIs for your business, bookings, billings, number of customers acquired, how much activity did they perform, what is the gross margin, and all of those KPIs, how much cash is the company keeping on their balance sheet? What are the KPIs specifically related to agile FP&A? Forecast accuracy. So when you're doing agile, you need a way to measure if this is any better than what you were doing before. So you have to target forecast accuracy. Will your forecast be better by 15 to 20%? And how would you know that? By back testing. So when the actuals come, you measure how far off were they from the last forecast, from the prior forecast before that, which of those forecast methodologies align best with the actuals. Planning cycle time reduction is another measure of agile FP&A. Did your cycle um, take less time? Were you able to start and stop quickly so the business could continue executing? And this would be short bursts of planning versus one tedious long 4-month budget cycle. Cross-departmental collaboration index. There are different ways to measure. And decision-making speed, from days to basically sometimes a few hours, decisions are made because they are already set that if this happens, we're going to proceed this way. So Spotify, in its algorithms to decide which music the consumers want, has improved its velocity, and that has improved customer engagement. So those are the KPIs for agile FP&A. So what does this transformation journey look like? Let's say that based on everything I just spoke, you have been sold on the agile FP&A. How would you go about doing it? It's just like any other project. You would like to incubate it in a small part of the organization so you don't distract the whole organization. You start out in a self-contained department and say, hey, let's think about what are some of the processes and within our finance function that we want to do slightly differently. Take a month to plan, take another phase 2, 30 days to build and test, and then phase 3, I apologize, the text is missing. The phase 3 box should say scale and launch. So you take your time. It's very important that you start with what success looks like and measure the progress during phase 2 and phase 3 to see if success is actually being achieved. And if it has been proven that it is successful, then you share it with other departments. And at that time, you become the ambassadors and say, hey, this is how we did it. This is how we managed a certain activity. So Zoom transformed their FP&A in 90 days because they went from, as everyone knows, 10 million daily participants to 300 million, a 30x increase. And they were able to deal with that traffic, standing up all those servers, etc., because they had plans how they would react if it was the case that they saw a surge in their customer base. So with that, that is my presentation today. I would be happy to take questions.
Great. Okay, Rena, here's one. How can finance leaders ensure their planning models remain flexible and scalable as market conditions evolve?
That's a good question. There are different ways to do it, depending on the industries. So let's say that your space is SaaS. You can look at everything in your model should be as much tied to assumptions as possible, which means there should be nothing that's hard coded because of one particular point of view. So if you have assumptions around, I'm going to have these 5 segments of customers, then what am I going to be my pricing assumptions for those segments? What kind of implementation or professional services assumptions can I make? What churn assumptions am I going to make? How do I assume how many customers will fall off? All of this should be dynamic. The more dynamic you are, the more you are able to tweak as the situation evolves. And you can tie it to a certain uh, assumption that has come from your design discussions, or you can tie it to historicals, or you can tie it to what the broader market is seeing, such as your competitors. So, as long as your assumptions are dynamic and there is a reason, documented reason why they are what they are, your models will also be dynamic. And so try to avoid doing anything hard coded or to force things to go a certain way, because that won't happen in real life. It may be like, oh, I need to be cash flow positive by this month, so I'm going to just drop all this large expense that's sitting in month -2 from there. Yes, that may make the model achieve a certain outcome, but you know that that's not the reality, because if you know a certain expense is going to be incurred, you're not going to be able to suddenly pause it. So stay true, stay transparent, and stay dynamic.
Great. Here's another audience question. What tools or technologies have proven most effective in helping organizations make data driven decisions quickly during periods of disruption?
Yeah, there's a obviously organizations, when they sort of launch, go to Series A, they all have an ERP, whether it's QuickBooks or NetSuite. But the tools that really help organizations with decision making, and especially from an FP&A standpoint, is their planning tool, the adaptives, the IBM host analytics, which I think is now Planful, Anaplan. These are tools that allow you to put in your dynamic assumptions. They give very customer friendly reporting. They integrate seamlessly with Google Sheets and Excel. So the extra effort of generating reports for different cuts of data by department, by account, by product, by project is minimal, which means that you can have weekly reports out and in someone's inbox or Slack by Monday morning. So, planning tools, I feel, are very important, but also of note is, how have you set it up? Is it connected in real time with your HR system? Is it connected in real time with your ERP? Um, is and other internal systems. It's important that it's well integrated, so it's looking at the most current data.
Great. Okay, here's another question. In what ways can a resilient FP&A strategy contribute to long-term business sustainability and profitability?
Yeah, the whole essence of FP&A is to sustain business profitability. So with FP&A, not only do you get these multiple scenarios which say, what if this happened? What would be the next 5 to 10 years look like? But you also get to sort of evolve your strategy. When you're presenting to the executives your scenario models to say, hey, this is how we would see an optimistic scenario play out. This is how we would see a more conservative play out. You can then kind of assess your overall strategy and see if you were to take parts of each of these scenarios and combine them in what is the most likely scenario, you could meander to an outcome that is uh, not only possible, achievable, but also within the budget. For example, you could take different aspects of scenarios and smooth out your hiring. You could release your products in a manner that the hire that you made for product A can then be leveraged sequentially on the release B and C and so forth. And instead of sort of having to do new hires and then maybe having to streamline your workforce, um, perhaps maybe even down later because you worked on everything at once and then you move to the next stage. So it's important to look at these scenarios side by side and take the best parts of each of these. Also, the long term success and sustainability of a business is about being predictable. Wall Street likes predictability. If you give a certain guidance, you stick with it. If it changes all the time, that leads to loss of predictability and loss of trust. So, all of these financial processes, to the extent that they can not guarantee, but somewhat assure that it will lead to profitable outcomes. In the distant future, it will continue to execute to deliver the profitability that we have given in our guidance. If we say to Wall Street that we are launching a certain automobile or product next year in the second half, let's make it happen. So if we are credible and we can deliver to that long term goals, that basically creates long term successful execution.
Great. And I think we can sneak in one more quick question here. How can finance leaders foster strong communication across teams to align strategy, execution, and planning under pressure?
That's um, that's a very valid question. Since finance is connected to everyone in the company, finance is the business partner. Business partner, as in we enable the businesses to execute their plans. We sit at the table with them and say, hey, you have X dollars, you can get Y headcount, you can invest so and such in OPEX, so much in capital expenses. We are there. How can you get everything you want within the finite dollars that you have? That is the role of the business partner. And every department in your company, whether it's operations or research or customer service, whatever it is, has a finance business partner. This person is empowering you to deliver your strategy within the budget. They are helping you make trade offs, um, all the way up to the CFO, who's basically the finance business partner of the executive team. So the CEO and the president of the company, they are all getting their advice from the CFO. So finance has a pivotal role in helping the executives manage the execution.
Great. Well, thank you again, Rena, for an excellent keynote. And I want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. As a reminder, please be sure to check out the prizes and raffle rules section to see how you can earn points for the chance to win one of several prizes. Our next session will begin at 11:35 a.m. Eastern Time, which will be a marketplace thought leadership and demo featuring Insight software titled Beyond Lease Accounting Compliance: Optimizing Efficiency. Please click the join button that will appear on your screen to be redirected to the next session, and we look forward to seeing you there.